documentary focuses on the journey of a Paralympian and what that entails. I wanted to shine a light on this idea to highlight no matter your limitations, anything can be achieved. The inaugural Paralympic Games took place in Rome in the year of 1960, which saw 16 men and women who formerly served in the army compete. Since that first Paralympic Games, there has been several pieces of history created, such as the Seoul Paralympics, which was significant due to that being the first time that Paralympic athletes were seen as parallel to Olympic athletes. Paralympic athletes are often labelled as inspirational, but what does their journey really look like? I'm going to explore funding and media disparities, the barriers, the breakthroughs, and whether that long-standing superhuman narrative is shifting. Recently, I sat down with former Paralympic athlete Pat Bailey, who talked to me about his journey through the trials and tribulations of his career.
Growing up with a disability, I just seem to accept what's there, tackle it. I have a different way of going about things, so I may do things slightly differently. But other than that, I went to a disabled school, which was considered a disabled school back then. There wasn't such a thing as integration into mainstream schools. I got involved in Paralympic sports in the latter days of school. There was a disabled sports club for adults and juniors based in Stretford, in actually just up the road at Stretford Sports Centre from here. And there was a mixture of people, adults doing disabled sport, and I went down to that, and obviously I seen then that disabled sport was something you could do, and that was it really. That's what set me off. Ooh, the journey to being a Paralympian, wow. What does it take? There's a bit of being strong enough mentally to cope with the things that are going to challenge you, and there was lots of them along the way. And then there's obviously the physical side of it. And I think you struggle with certain things, access, for example, for getting to places. There wasn't all the things that made life easier for you back then.
I was interested to find out firsthand the differences between Pat's experience in his first competitive Paralympic Games in Seoul 1988 to the current day Paralympians.
I competed at the Seoul 88 Paralympics, which followed the able-bodied Olympics. It was meant to be like parallel to the able-bodied games, and that's what it was. But I was competing, many years before then. I had times that I had to reach on the track to qualify. There was a lot of events and a lot of competitions all over Europe before then, and a lot of kit and things to get and buy. And disabled sport wasn't recognised as it is now. I call them lucky now. They don't know how lucky they were really. But there was times when funding things like tyres at £30 a time when you were popping inner tubes on your racing chair, and you were buying them yourself. It was dear. There was gloves, there was all sorts of equipment I needed just to train. There was no help with that. It was only my parents that was paying out for that back then. There was no way of funding it other than parents. In general, funding was a tough one. Yeah.
For former Paralympic athletes, funding was largely self-funded, which came at a cost. Companies would opt not to sponsor them due to their lack of exposure.
Funding today is massive. If you get a medal position now at a major games, you're likely to get lottery funding. I was a young lad against men really, and a lot of the people I was up against were people that had accidents in life, and their funding was come about sadly from accidents. So they'd have got insurance, they'd have got money to to buy the things that they needed and to compete. And to them, it was a means of rehabilitation. They were in the thick of it, and I was up against them. So it was always a battle, always a battle. In sport, the barriers were there, but then they were barriers that, you know, they were there put in your way, and you were there to try and break those barriers down. The difference being that you had both. You know, you had the barriers of sport and you had the barriers of the disability.
It's safe to say the pendulum is swinging in a positive way.
Looking at the media now in relation to what it was then, you didn't have anyone to look up to, because you had no vision of anybody. You didn't see wheelchair racing. We had a magazine from the States. It was called Sport and Spokes, and this magazine was it went all over America, and it was all disabilities and all sports, disabled sports within it. There was no internet to look it up on. There was no TV to follow or someone to look at and rewind back. There was none of your YouTubes and all that side of things. So in terms of seeing disabled people back then on TV and the media, it was pretty much the London Marathon, because that was the first time that really people seen wheelchair racing. If you said you were a wheelchair racer, the first thing people would say to you is, "Oh, do you do the London Marathon?" As if that was the only race that wheelchairs ever did. There was nothing other than the London Marathon to watch. That's the only time people would see disabled sport, really.
Thank you to Pat for sharing his journey. I will be continuing my investigation at Kirby Athletics Club, where I've come to find out the differences in athletes' careers between then and now.
I walked up until the age of 8. You're just your typical child. I ran around, I played football, I did athletics, I did everything that all my friends were doing until the 26th of October in 2005. I had inflammation of my spinal cord, which left me with a spinal cord injury. That's about here, the T5 level, and it's left me paralysed since then.
And how did you adapt to that challenge?
I think at 8 years old, you just bounce back, don't you? I think it was probably harder for my parents, you know, seeing their run around 8-year-olds having to get a wheelchair. But for me, it was probably the best thing ever. You know, it was really cool. You know, I remember watching TV when I was younger, and Adi Adepitan was on the BBC One advert doing wheelies. So the minute I got my wheelchair, I thought I was him. So that was what I just wanted to learn how to do that, and I just wanted to, you know, have fun and be a normal 8-year-old again.
What does a typical training day look like?
So for me, I train about 2 hours a day. A couple of times a week I train a little bit more. I do 2 sessions, which would be up to just about 3 hours. Today's session was really working on my 1500 meters and a little bit more endurance. We've just got back from racing in Switzerland in the Swiss Racing Series. So now we're back, we can put all the things we've learned in the races that I've done out there into practice and just try and be a bit stronger and faster and just get ready for the World Championships in October, really.
What is one crucial element that you think makes the journey of a Paralympic and Olympic athlete?
I'm a bit Mother Earth, so it's not about one element. We call it a circle. So there's the psychological, social, physiological, and fundamentals, and all those things come together to make an athlete. To say one is more important than the other, I think at the very top level, it is about psychology, because when you get to that point, everybody is pretty damn hot, and the psychology is very important. But then you don't get to that point unless you've got the physiological ability and the training behind you. So there's no one thing really.
And it's who, like Pete said, who can deal with the ups and downs and the unpredictability of what it's like in the championship, because so many different things can happen that don't normally happen, and it's how you deal with that.
And it's the journey, you know, it's the journey's tough, because you can be around the Paralympics, nice around the Paralympics, but in Paris he got 2 fourths and a fifth, so he didn't get a medal, you know, but he performed incredibly well. But you know, but he's strong enough to go back and fight for his medal again, you know, and that having that strength is important as well.
It's about psychology. It's about knowing how to prepare for races. It's about trying to get yourself as prepared as you possibly can be to be on that start line, ready to just compete against everybody and do the best you can do.
We're becoming more and more sports science based as the athletes are getting better and better. We use Garmin for his heart rate, so we are investigating sessions to see what they're doing and then trying to get the best sessions in the best way and the best format. You have to support an athlete when they hit the championships, and the pressure that's on them from just wanting to do so well, it is tough. Hopefully you go on a journey with the athlete and you both learn together and you kind of grow together.
I think it's just important that the athletes are enjoying what they're doing. You get to know what works for them, both in training and in competition.
It's taken a long time for me to get confident in races. I am quite a nervous racer. I throw up a lot before races just because I get so nervous. But I think that nervous energy kind of fuels me, and it's just about using that nervous energy in the right way. So I've been working a lot with the British Athletics sports psychologist about how to, utilize those nerves, not let them consume me, but I can use them to get the best out of myself when I'm racing.
What is the most rewarding part about seeing your athletes succeed?
I think for me it's just like seeing where they've started from. Like some athletes like you've seen tonight started when they're very young, so it's sort of seeing the journey we've been on.
For me, it was the very, very first step. So many people think that gaining a disability is going to be the end of their life. I was discharged from hospital, and 5 days later I was playing wheelchair basketball at Manchester Mavericks Wheelchair Basketball Club. And for me, that was the start on this Paralympic journey. I had no idea what the Paralympic Games was until the 5th of January in 2006. That's when I found out what the Paralympic Games were. And ever since then, my dream has been a Paralympic champion.